The station was loud enough to drown out thought. Voices overlapping, wheels dragging, the metallic groan of trains coming and going. Yet in the middle of all that motion, she stood perfectly still. Her gaze wasn't on the crowd, not on the departures board flashing with delays, but on a single red scarf knotted around her wrist. It wasn't for warmth. The fabric was frayed at the edges, threads loosened like nerves too long stretched. She tightened the knot once, twice, as if it were the only thing holding her together. The scarf moved when the wind slipped through the open platform, brushing her hair across her face. She didn't push it back. Her hands shook and still, she held the scarf as though it carried a weight greater than the suitcase at her feet. People rushed past, bumping shoulders, dropping tickets, hugging their goodbyes. She kept searching, eyes darting every time the doors of a train hissed open. That restless scanning left, right, left wasn't just looking for a person. It was waiting for something that had already been stolen. Her cracked watch blinked the wrong time. She checked it anyway, lips pressed tight, a flicker of a memory trapped between the ticking seconds. "Mine," she whispered, so quietly the word broke before it reached her own ears. The announcement overhead blurred into static, the kind that lingers too long on an unanswered line. She closed her eyes, letting the vibration of the passing train tremble through her body, almost enough to pull her forward, almost enough to make her leave. But she stayed. Her suitcase handle dug into her palm where she gripped it too hard. A paper corner stuck out of the zipper. A folded sheet, creased a dozen times, the kind you'd pull out only when you needed to remember what was yours. She didn't look at it. Not yet. Someone nearby laughed, the kind of careless laugh that filled the hollow space she was guarding. She turned her head sharply, and for a second her expression cracked. Fury, grief, and something else too dangerous to name flickered across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by silence so heavy it pressed against the noise around her. The scarf slipped loose, falling into her hand. She held it like a promise or a wound. She looked at the crowd again, but this time her eyes didn't search. They burned. The doors of the next train opened with a sigh. She took one step forward, steady now, as though the shaking had transferred into the rails themselves. Her lips moved again, barely a sound. Not a question. Not a plea. Just the quiet echo of a word that still belonged to her. Mine. The train's hiss lingered in the air like steam from a kettle, but she didn't board. The red scarf dangled between her fingers, a reminder heavier than her suitcase. She pressed the fabric against her mouth, not to warm herself but to quiet the words pressing out of her chest. For a moment she let her eyes slip shut. And suddenly it wasn't the station she was standing in. It was the kitchen from years ago. Her father's hands, broad and cracked from work, folding the same scarf around her neck on a winter morning. "Hold on to what's yours even when the world tries to take it," he had said, tugging it snug. She was 12. She hadn't understood. Not until now. The scarf trembled as her fingers gripped tighter. A shout nearby brought her back. She opened her eyes, watching a boy run into his mother's arms, the reunion fierce, desperate, like the world had almost ended without each other. Their embrace was clumsy, filled with laughter and relief. She turned her face away, her lips pressed so tightly they whitened. Her own suitcase seemed smaller suddenly. It wasn't new. It carried scuffs from the time she dragged it across wet pavement, from when she'd left one cheap room for another. Inside were just clothes, a book with notes crammed in the margins, and the folded paper she couldn't stop thinking about. Words she'd written, torn out of her hands in front of the lights, stolen before she had spoken them. Her throat ached. She tilted her head back, blinking at the high steel beams of the station, willing her tears not to fall. Across the platform someone was watching. He leaned against the column, still as stone, a shadow in the bright chaos. He didn't pretend to hide it. His gaze was fixed, steady. She noticed him only when the crowd shifted and revealed his face. For a heartbeat she wondered if he knew. If he had been there that day when her voice was replaced by someone else's. But he said nothing. He only stood, quiet, intentional. She wrapped the scarf back around her wrist, tighter this time, as if to cover the pulse that wouldn't slow down. The announcement board flickered again. Her train delayed. 10 minutes stretched into forever. She let out a shaky laugh, too bitter for anyone else to mistake as amusement. Fate was taunting her, dangling the choice between running and waiting. Her fingers brushed the zipper of her suitcase, but she didn't open it. She only stood there still. From the corner of her eye she caught the stranger's mouth curve just barely. Not a smile. Something sharper like recognition. And that was when she hesitated, one foot forward, one hand clutching the scarf, unable to move. The platform lights flickered once, a tremor running through the crowd as if even the station held its breath. She tugged the red scarf tighter, but her eyes betrayed her, sliding back toward the man leaning against the column. The first thing she noticed wasn't his face, it was his shoes. The leather was worn thin at the edges, soles dark with rain and years. Shoes that had traveled too many roads with no destination. He shifted slightly, and from his jacket pocket, the corner of a photograph slipped out. Not crisp, not new, creased, bent, the kind of photo carried too long. She couldn't see the faces, but she felt the ache of it anyway. A private weight held close, the same way she held her scarf. Her chest tightened. An invisible mirror. His silence echoed her own. A gust of wind swept the station, rattling the signs, lifting strands of her hair into her eyes. Then came the sound, low, distant thunder rolling above the glass roof. A storm threatening but not yet breaking. The air felt charged, sharp on the skin. She turned away, forcing her gaze to the departures board, though her heart beat against her ribs in a rhythm she couldn't ignore. Leave. Just leave. That's what her mind told her. Yet her body stayed rooted, as if tied to the platform itself. Another flash of memory struck, her voice on the stage, trembling with fear and fire, and then cut short. The words leaving someone else's mouth. The applause. The theft dressed as triumph. Her fingers grazed the suitcase handle. Go. Run. But her other hand clung to the scarf, the one tether she couldn't cut. She risked another glance. His eyes were on her, steady, not invasive but unyielding. He didn't blink, didn't turn away. And for a split second, she swore he knew the word she had whispered earlier. Mine. But was it fate? Or a trap? The rain began, soft at first, speckling the wide glass panes above, then harder, the drops echoing like small fists on metal. Passengers pulled jackets tighter, rushed toward exits, muttered about delays. She stood exposed, the storm dripping into her hair, her face. He didn't move. Rain slid across his shoulders, his jaw, but he remained still. Watching. Waiting. She felt the pull, unnerving, magnetic. Not safety, not danger. Something in between. Her lips parted as though to speak, but no sound came. She swallowed, stepped once toward him, then stopped. The thunder cracked, shaking the air. Her suitcase tipped slightly with the vibration. She reached to steady it, but her eyes stayed locked on his. The question hung there, heavy, unanswered. Was this the beginning of something she had lost? Or the start of losing everything again? She gripped the suitcase handle until her knuckles burned. One step forward, two. Her heart screamed for escape, her body pulling her toward the train doors now yawning open like a mouth ready to swallow her whole. But she paused. Just one last look, just once. And there he was, no longer at the column. Somehow closer. Not too close, but close enough that the rain streaking down his jacket dripped into a puddle that rippled toward her shoes. Her chest tightened as if the storm outside had moved into her ribs. The scarf slipped loose from her wrist, falling into the shallow water at her feet. She bent down fast, scooping it up, fingers trembling. But when she lifted her head again, he was holding the other end. He hadn't moved, yet somehow he had. Her breath caught. For a moment they both held it between them. Fabric stretched like a line neither wanted to cross. A whisper of thought flickered through her mind, something her father once told her, years ago in the quiet of their kitchen. Some people carry more than just bags, they carry silence. The scarf felt heavier than cloth, heavier than memory. Around them the world kept moving. A woman glanced their way and whispered to her companion. A small shake of the head, the look people gave when they thought they understood a story without hearing a word. Quiet judgment, sharp as glass. She wanted to shout, you don't know what was taken. But her throat betrayed her, sealing the words inside. Instead, her eyes locked on his. He looked down briefly, almost ashamed, then back up. Rain clung to his eyelashes, and in that silence she saw something raw, unhidden. Not guilt. Not innocence. Something in between. Her suitcase tilted again. The paper inside, creased, fragile, shifted toward the opening zipper, as though even the objects around her wanted to betray the secret she carried. The train horn wailed, urgent, final. People pressed forward, footsteps splashing in puddles, mutters of annoyance rising like static. The doors would close soon. She pulled at the scarf, but he didn't let go. Not hard, just enough to stop her. His voice came low, rough, breaking the silence for the first time. Not everything stolen stays stolen. Her lips parted, but no reply came. The words fell into her chest like stones into water, rippling out, breaking something inside. The doors began to close. She turned sharply, half-step toward escape, half-step toward him, breath shaking. And still, the scarf stretched between them, red against the storm, refusing to let her choose. The doors slammed shut. The train pulled away with a scream of metal, dragging everyone else forward, except her. She stood frozen, the scarf still in both their hands, her chest pounding as if it wanted to tear itself free. And then he released it. No fight, no pull. Just let it slip from his fingers. The scarf fell against her palm, soaked and heavy. Her suitcase toppled fully this time, spilling the folded paper out onto the wet platform. She bent down to grab it, frantic, but his hand moved faster. He picked it up, eyes scanning the page before she could snatch it back. Her pulse crashed. Those words, her words, the lines she had written in sleepless nights, stolen on stage by someone else, now trembling in his grasp. When he lifted his eyes, they were different. Softer. Breaking. This, his voice faltered. He held the page like it was fire. These words were hers. The storm outside roared. Confusion lashed through her. Hers. He nodded, jaw tight. From his wallet, he pulled the creased photograph she'd noticed before. He turned it toward her. A girl. Younger. Smiling, alive in frozen ink. The scarf, her scarf, wrapped around that girl's neck. My daughter, he said simply. The words tore out of him like they had been waiting too long. She's gone. The scarf, the words. I thought I had lost them all. The platform tilted in her mind. Her legs weakened. The scarf, once her anchor, now felt like a chain. Was it hers or his? Her father's voice echoed again, the line reborn in her head. Hold on to what's yours, even when the world tries to take it. But what if she was the thief now? He stepped closer, rain dripping from his brow. The company. The conference. The name you applied under, it all crosses my desk. And now, his voice lowered, trembling on the edge of something dangerous. Now I see your words and hers. The same fire. The same storm. Her breath shattered. The company. The one she had begged for. Pinned all her chances on, the one that could make or break her future. He wasn't just part of it. He owned it. Her throat closed around a scream that never left. Point of no return. She couldn't walk away now, not without tearing herself in half. The scarf clung to her wrist, the paper damp in his hand. The crowd had thinned, leaving only echoes of judgment in the air. He gestured toward the staircase leading up, into the station's glass heart. Come with me. We'll finish this. Her feet moved before her mind did, each step heavier than the last. At the top, a door waited, dark, unmarked. She placed her hand on it, her pulse burning through her skin. And then she pushed it open. The room swallowed sound the moment she stepped in. Glass walls overlooked the storm-soaked city, lightning cutting brief scars of light across the skyline. She stood dripping, scarf heavy around her wrist, suitcase abandoned at the door. He followed, the paper still in his hand, edges soft from rain. For a long moment neither spoke. Only the storm spoke for them, thunder rolling like the echo of something broken too long. Finally, he set the page down on the wide wooden table between them. Her words stared back at her, warped with water but still alive. "You wrote this," he said, not as a question but as a verdict. She swallowed. "Yes. And yet they were hers once too. Same rhythms, same fire. My daughter wrote lines like these when she was your age. She swore the world would hear her voice." His hand trembled on the paper. But the world never got the chance. Her chest cracked. A silence bloomed, heavy as grief pulling her under. She wanted to scream that these words were hers, born from her own nights of hunger and fear, not some borrowed echo. Yet when she looked at the photograph again, the girl's eyes alight with the dream she recognized in her own, her rage faltered. "Maybe," she whispered, "we were carrying the same storm." He stared at her long and unblinking, as if searching her face for his daughter's ghost. Then slowly, he lifted the scarf from her wrist. His fingers were gentle, reverent, as though untying a wound. "This belonged to her," he said. "But it survived to find you." Her throat tightened. She wanted to hold on, to keep the fabric that had anchored her through every loss. But her father's voice returned, reshaped by the storm. "Hold on to what's yours, even when the world tries to take it." And maybe sometimes holding on meant letting go. Her hand opened. She let him take the scarf. For a heartbeat, it felt like giving away her last shield. But then unexpectedly she felt lighter, her shoulders unburdened. The scarf was no longer proof of what she had lost. It had become a bridge between past and present, between grief and survival. He folded it carefully like a prayer, then set it on the table with the paper. "You remind me of her," he said quietly. "And that is why I choose you. Not because you asked for it. Not because you deserve pity. But because you carry what she left behind. Fire that refuses to be drowned." Her chest burned. Victory and loss tangled inside her, indistinguishable. She would walk forward now, but it would never be clean. She looked once more at the page. Her words. His daughter's shadow. A union neither could undo. Lightning flashed again, and in it she saw herself reflected in the glass. No longer the girl waiting on the platform searching. This time she was the one being watched. She picked up her suitcase. Her hand hovered on the door. Heart pounding in rebirth and ruin both. Her voice came soft but sharp, cutting the silence in two. "Not every stranger you help is meant to stay, but some leave you changed forever." The storm had passed by the time she stepped outside. The city shimmered, streets slick with silver light, the kind that makes every broken surface shine. She walked slowly, suitcase rolling behind her, lighter now though she hadn't unpacked a single thing. Each step felt different, measured, steady, not rushed like before. The scarf was gone, yet her wrist felt strangely warm, as though the fabric had burned its mark there forever. She paused at a small cafe window. Inside, strangers laughed over cups of coffee, their voices soft and ordinary. For a moment she let herself watch. Not envy this time. Not longing. Just watching. As if life could exist in fragments she didn't need to steal or prove. Her reflection in the glass startled her. Damp hair clinging to her face, eyes darker than she remembered. But beneath it, a strength she hadn't seen before. Not born of applause or recognition, born of surviving the silence. The suitcase wobbled when she pulled it over the curb. She steadied it, smiling faintly at the thought of how many times she had dragged it across unforgiving ground. Maybe it was more than just a bag now, it was proof she hadn't stopped moving, even when everything else had tried to hold her still. She thought of the scarf folded on that table, no longer hers to carry. Instead of grief she felt something else, release. Some objects return to where they belong, and some only pass through our hands long enough to change us. Her father's voice returned again, not as command but as comfort. Sometimes love is not romance, it's recognition. She closed her eyes, letting the words settle. Recognition. That was what she had seen in the stranger's eyes. Not ownership, not pity, but the fragile mirror of two storms crossing paths. The rain began again. Light this time, more blessing than punishment. She didn't hurry. She let it touch her face, washing the last of the night from her skin. At the corner she stopped. The city spread out in all directions, 1,000 unknown roads waiting. For once, the choice didn't terrify her. It thrilled her. She gripped her suitcase tighter, her steps firm, and walked into the blur of streetlights. Not every ending had to be a victory. Not every wound had to close. Some stories lived in the spaces between, unfinished, unspoken, but still enough. And maybe that was the point. Because sometimes the hardest truths aren't shouted or stolen. Sometimes they're whispered, half lost in the rain, waiting for someone brave enough to listen.